My name is Jan Graham. Nan asked me to talk to you about my experience with Guillain-Barré syndrome. I was diagnosed with that in 2007. The only way I really know how to do this is just take it day by day and then go from there. She just asked to give the viewpoint of the patient. So this all started on November 2nd, 2007. It was a day I just had a really bad headache. I don't generally get headaches, but this was just a really bad headache. And it didn't go away all day. I took ibuprofen, I took Tylenol, and nothing really touched it. I don't know if that had anything to do with the GBS or not, but to me, that's when it started. That Saturday morning, I woke up still with the headache, just not feeling well, and noticed that my fingers were tingling and my feet, when I walked, would tingle when I walked. And so it scared me a little bit. I really wasn't sure. I thought I was having a stroke. I woke my husband up and told him I thought I needed to go to the doctor. But before we went to the doctor, I had had a chiropractic adjustment the day before, or a couple of days before, and so I called him to see if maybe there was something with popping the neck, if maybe that had done something, and he said he didn't think so, and he advised me to see a medical doctor. So I went just to the pedal clinic, walk-in clinic on Saturday, and saw Dr. Bullock. And he did several things. One of the things he did was tested my reflexes, and they were fine. And he seemed to think that I was depressed, that it was, I forgot what he called it, situational depression or, something like that. And I'd had some big life events. My oldest son had gotten married in May. My youngest son had moved out, and actually he had moved out in April, and he was in the process of actually moving back home. And so there was just a lot of stuff like that. I didn't really think I was depressed because I didn't feel depressed. But, I got the prescription for Lexapro filled and went home and took one, thinking that it was going to help, whatever it was going to help immediately. And initially, I really sort of did feel better. I had no appetite. So I came home and just laid down, and by that evening, I was feeling much worse, hurting all over, nauseated, just really feeling bad. So we went to the emergency room, and the doctor there asked my husband and me if we wanted him to do a spinal tap. And he said if it was his wife, he would not do it, that he thought it was a migraine. And the only way I can describe how I felt on that Saturday night was, if you've ever had a baby and been through labor, it felt like that, except all over my body. I couldn't be still. It was just, I don't know. I can't describe the pain, just a bone deep ache. So he sent us home with, I had an antibiotic because I had a UTI, and then I was sick through the night, nauseated, and then I did obviously sleep some Sunday. When I woke up Sunday morning, the numbness was still there. I was weak, and at that point had developed double vision, which actually we didn't know at the time, but that is a Miller-Fisher part of Guillain-Barré that we didn't know about. So my husband at the time was a minister of music, so he went to church because he didn't have anybody to fill in for him. And then we went to the emergency room again after church Sunday afternoon. And this time they did the spinal tap and admitted me for observation. I didn't know what they were looking for in the spinal tap. I really thought I had MS. They ruled that out, of course. But the thing to note on that Sunday night is my protein level was normal. and the spinal tap. And apparently with Guillain-Barré, your protein levels should be elevated. So it's really weird as, what's the word? This is not a common syndrome, but my husband's aunt had Guillain-Barré, and my sister-in-law's, someone in her family had it, and one of my best friends growing up had someone in her family that had it. So 3 people were telling my husband that that's what it was. And because of that initial spinal tap, the doctors disagreed. The neurologist referred me for a psych evaluation. In fact, they brought us a 4-page questionnaire for me to complete. As the day progressed, Sunday and Monday, it got to where the weakness was so that I could not hold my head up. They were giving me morphine for the pain. I think my family thought that part of the problem was I was over-medicated. The doctor seemed to think that my family was influencing me as to how I felt. They were telling me I was weak, and they were telling me what they saw, and that I was believing it. Therefore, it was in my head. On Tuesday night, they put us in a little room for observation. On Tuesday night, they decided to actually admit me and move me to a different floor. They were moving me to the 9th floor. And so we got moved up there, and I had one of those little things on my finger that I think it measures the oxygen in your blood. So on Tuesday night, the alarm went off on that, and my husband went to get the nurses, and I was in respiratory arrest. And I had been where I couldn't catch my breath, and I kept telling my family that I couldn't take a deep breath. So the paralysis, had ascended and affected my diaphragm. So on Tuesday night, November the 6th, or early in the morning on the 7th, I was transferred to ICU and put on a ventilator and had a feeding tube. The nurse was trying to put the feeding tube up my nose, but I have a deviated septum. I knew, and I was so aware. I was aware of everything going on around me. But an odd awareness. I could hear what she was saying, but of course I couldn't respond. And I wanted to talk so bad and couldn't. It was just a really odd time. So they finally put the feeding tube down my throat with the ventilator tube. And so that all happened on Tuesday. I do not remember anything else until Thursday, about 1 o'clock in the morning. My ICU nurse came in and introduced himself and asked me if I knew what day it was. And so I must have responded somehow that he understood that I did not, and he told me what day it was. And it's odd, we were able to have a conversation, even though initially my hands were tied to the bed because I think I had been fighting the tubes. But he let them go. He untied me, and I was able to communicate somehow. I really don't know, but his parents were our neighbors, and so that was a really neat thing. So as the days went, that was, like I said, on a Tuesday night, I was in ICU. They tested to take me off of the ventilator, I think on Friday, which was the scariest thing I think I've ever done, because they turned it off or down and then walked away and did not stay in there with me. So I had a panic attack. And so they didn't do that again until the next Monday. which I did not pass that test either. So on the next Tuesday, on November 14th, Dr. Stobner came in that morning, as he normally does, and he was adjusting the machine and all, and I didn't know what he was doing, but apparently he turned the machine like all the way down, where I was not actually getting oxygen from the machine. I was breathing on my own, I just didn't know it. So it was very hard to breathe all day because basically I was breathing through a straw. And then he came back in that evening, and I couldn't quite figure out why he was there that night, because he normally didn't. And in his best Donald Duck voice, he told me that I did not know him very well, or Elmer Fudd, I'm not real sure, Elmer Fudd. And said that I had been breathing on my own all day and that I was ready to come off the ventilator. And it was probably another one of the scariest moments of my life, because I was very afraid to come off. I really had told my nurse I could write notes on the sheet, so that's how I was communicating with my nurses and with my family. And I told my nurse that I just wanted to get a trach, and that I didn't want to have to breathe on my own, because I was just scared. So he got a respiratory therapist, and they came and got the tube out and put oxygen, on my nose, and the family all came in at 10, and we just had a little party. Everybody rejoiced. And one of the greatest things, though, a nurse did for me that night, for one, I could start getting some food, I think the next day, maybe that night, I'm not sure, but I like banana popsicles, so she went to a store because they didn't have any popsicles in the fridge there, and she bought me some banana popsicles and put my name on them. And then another nurse, when she came in to check on me, and I told her how scared I was, and she was asking why I was scared, and I was just afraid I was going to stop breathing again. And she said, well, we're watching. And I said, I know, I'm just scared. So she took all her paperwork, and she stayed in my room with me all night, working on her paperwork in my room on the computer there in ICU. And just the sweetest thing, those things were so important to me. They let my family stay in as much as they wanted. It was just a time of really seeing God work in my life and my family. And the respiratory therapists there, were so sweet and went and found a bed. They were having to hit me on the back because I had developed pneumonia in one of my lungs. And so he went and found one of the beds that would vibrate or something, so they wouldn't have to do that. And when I came off the ventilator the next day, my husband always watched the neurologist come when he got there at work. And he came to my room first. Within 5 minutes of pulling into the driveway, he was in my room. And I will say this too, the diagnosis was not made for Guillain-Barré until like Wednesday or Thursday after I had moved to ICU. And I'll just give a shout out to Dr. Helveston, because he had been on vacation and is a friend of my little brother's. And my brother called him and asked him to come see about me. So he came to the hospital, and he immediately made the diagnosis. They did another spinal tap, which supported the Guillain-Barré diagnosis, and started the treatment there. So let me just get that out of the way. I had 5 days of the IVIG treatment, and then waited for it to work. So when the other neurologist, who is actually still on my case, came in and was looking at me, and I said, this is really going to be a slow process, isn't it? And he said, what? This is not slow. He said, this is amazing. I had you scheduled for a tracheostomy on Friday. And so for me to have come off the ventilator like I did, he was very impressed. In fact, I was moved to a room on, I think that Saturday. They moved me to a room for the weekend, and then I went to rehab at the hospital on Monday. This was the week of Thanksgiving. So I've been in the hospital since November 4th. And so Monday of Thanksgiving week, I was in rehab, which was very, very different. Although I will say, I know the hospital policy is rehab patients can't have anyone staying with them and that sort of thing, but they were very gracious and allowed my mom spent the night with me so my husband could work, and she and Dad stayed in the room and hung out while I had my rehab because they just didn't want me to be alone. So the hospital was very nice in letting my family minister to me, as well as the nurses and everybody, the therapist and all. So I had therapy, and the girl that was my therapist had told me that I could get a pass out on Thursday for Thanksgiving if I did well. In fact, she came in on Thanksgiving morning and worked with me and then gave me the pass out. And I came back, and then I was released on Saturday. I was in the hospital 3 weeks, 10 days in ICU, 7 on the ventilator. And so by the 1st of December, I was home, going to outpatient physical therapy here at a place in Petal, and I did that through the end of January. I work at Petal School District, so by the 1st of January, when students and staff went back to work, I went back to work full-time. But actually, I was part-time, so it's part-time, full-time. And I taught piano at the time. And so life just sort of went back to normal. It was a very scary thing for me and my family, but I look at it as a blessing. It helped me be a better person, be more compassionate, and I learned a lot about doctors and nurses and just how important they are. And so I guess that's my story, and I'm thankful every day when I put my feet on the floor and my legs hold me up, because once you've been horizontal for a while, it gets a little hard to be vertical again. So I guess that's it. Thank you.